many of you know me other than Mary from my past Rotary travels up and down the coast. But anyway, if you have any questions about me, just ask.
You were riding a bicycle, weren't you?
No, I ride a scooter.
Oh, okay.
I terrorize the hardest. Anyway. I'm not here as a Rotarian because I'm taking a break from Rotary, but I'm here as a representative of the nonprofit organization registered in Oregon called Adopt a Village in Guatemala. And since I know this club has always been active with youth services and the related projects, I'm hoping that I can possibly get you excited about what we're doing in Guatemala. And yes, it's fall, and yes, here I am presenting a project. Sorry. Didn't read your fine print, I guess.
No, that was for a different organization.
I know. Organization is an organization, right? You know, if they come with some ask, you know, they should read the fine print. Anyway, I'm not coming with an ask, I'm coming with an invitation. So, I'm coming with a fine print. So, anyway, I named this presentation Empowering Maya Children Through Education because the programs of Adopt a Village in Guatemala are primarily oriented to help Maya children in the remotest possible areas in Guatemala. And this, how do I forward it?
The arrow key forward.
There it is. So, this nonprofit was founded about three decades ago by Rotarian Frances Dixon, and she traveled through Guatemala and saw a need. Brian.
I got it.
Yeah. I think maybe I'll stand on this side so I don't get in the way of the image when I fast forward. Anyway, Frances Dixon, you may have heard 2 years ago, the district presented it, but Rotary International recognized her with the Service of Self Award, which, as you all know, is a fairly acclaimed award that Rotary gives out. And they honored her for her 3 decades of service to the impoverished Maya youth in this remote area of Guatemala. They also got another award for sustainability. They're trying to throw nutrition in with the learning part, but primarily the programs are focused on education and literacy. I visited the site in 2019, just before COVID got into the picture. And I'm glad I did because it taught me a lot about what they're doing there. I spent 2 weeks there working with the locals and the staff at the school and getting to know the children. And I was very impressed by what they were trying to do there. So here's the typical Rotarian cheap labor photo. So this is where the place is located. Okay, I don't know how familiar you are with Guatemala, but Guatemala city is down here, and it goes a little bit further. Then it goes over towards the Yucatan Peninsula and up a little further. Not all of that is on the map, but this is where the school is located that Adopt a Village in Guatemala built and operates. And basically the Oregon-based nonprofit raises all the funds, and a staff that they hired operates the schools. So you can see how remote it is. Now, here's Mexico. You think, oh, they just can hop right across the border. No, there are ridges and ridges and ridges that you would have to traverse to get into Mexico, and it's just one of those places where you can't get there from here. When I went there, it took me 3 days to get there. 1 day to get to Guatemala City. Of course, we're on the West Coast, so you know everything's difficult. Then another day to travel by chicken bus to another city nearer the schools, and then by truck over what I would call abandoned Oregon-style logging roads, at best, to get get to the school. It's that remote. So here's the problem that Francis discovered. The literacy rate in Guatemala is, at 80%, it doesn't seem that low, but compared to other places, it is. And however, of that 80% country average, only about 40+% of the Maya indigenous people are literate, can be considered literate. And then for the women, the Maya women, it's even lower. So I think you can see the problem. Yes?
What language do they speak? Spanish?
Well, the official language of Guatemala is Spanish. However, these Maya in their remote villages, where they were all displaced by the Civil War that ended in the 90s, they all speak different Maya languages. Okay, and I'll get to that problem later because you touched on that.
Yeah, because being literate doesn't mean you're necessarily conversant if they have a localized language.
Well, it's not a written language for starters. So, anyway, functioning in a country where the official language is Spanish makes it difficult if you don't speak Spanish. But I'm going to get to that, so thank you for getting me started in that direction. So, this is what Adopted Village in Guatemala founded, and these are some of the programs that they offer. Okay, they decided these Maya children had very little opportunity for education to make it past elementary school, because in Guatemala, elementary school 1 through 6 is all that's required. And the government does not provide middle or high school education. So Adopted Village in Guatemala decided to build this center and offer middle and high school education to the Maya children in the area. So this is the high school they built, and that's the middle school they built sometime after. Total, they can accommodate about 50 students at max capacity. But there are some restrictions and challenges with that too, and I'll get into this later. So this is what, for instance, this is the front of the classroom with a little lab set up, but Frances decided that they needed more than just an academic curriculum, and she sort of loosely styled it on the Montessori approach, if any of you are familiar with that. But so in addition to academic, she also thought it was important for them to learn some technical skills, like how to operate a computer, how to design a website, how to maintain a computer, how to repair a computer, to give with the thought in mind that that would make them more employable once they graduate from high school, and it is true in that area. In addition, because there's malnutrition is rampant there, subsistence farming and day laborers is what most of the parents do, or the fathers anyway. And so they don't have a lot of opportunities. And giving them some agricultural skills, like growing vegetables, figuring out what grows well and maintaining vegetables, is one of the skills that they teach the kids at these schools. And all of this is strictly donor funded. So the government, the local government doesn't support it financially, nor do any locals. I mean, the parents really just don't have anything. So the Adopted Village in Guatemala, a nonprofit organization based here in Oregon, kind of does the funding. And so we're always raising funds to make these programs possible. Another program that they started, and this is really one that's very, very important, and it starts even earlier than the school year. They discovered that most of the preschoolers, once they get into first grade, because they have illiterate parents that only speak one of the many Maya languages at home, and these kids, these preschoolers, have never been exposed to Spanish, they would come to first grade and they would struggle because they didn't comprehend enough Spanish to be able to keep up. And these schools don't give them any help, any remedial language training or anything like that to help them integrate into first grade and continue beyond first grade. So Adopted Village decided to come up with a program to get the preschoolers into, to give them enough Spanish comprehension and not necessarily reading, but some letters, numbers, etc., get used to hearing Spanish, so they could actually get into first grade and have a chance to succeed in being able to keep up with the curriculum. The norm had been that they would struggle, and many would drop out long before they finished sixth grade. And then that was the end of it anyway. So by providing them a little bit of a leg up when they first get into first grade, it was going to help them try to go through the 1 through 6 elementary school classes, and then be eligible to possibly attend middle and high school as well. So right now, this program is active in 3 villages. The difficulty is where the school is, the nearest village is a 2+ hour travel away. So transportation is a real issue. You usually just can't get there from here, and there's no transportation system. There are very few buses, and certainly not in this area. So it's difficult to get around. So we're doing this in 3 villages right now, and the 4th village, the parents in the 4th village have asked if we could bring it to their village as well. So that means we have to find another bilingual teacher that speaks the Maya dialect that is typical for that village, and to teach the kids and help them get ready for first grade. So we're doing that, and we're evaluating if we can fund this 4th village. But you see this little young lady here. That's one of the high school students from the Maya Jaguar School. She lives in that village, and part of what's expected of her is when she goes home, that she reads stories to children and play board games with them and getting used to hearing Spanish and mimicking Spanish and repeating and getting into it, so to speak. In addition, the students at the middle and high school, they're each assigned a bed that they can plant with any vegetables they want that thrive in the area. And then they're expected to tend to that vegetable bed and share the harvest eventually with the common dining hall. So the way the campus operates, because it's so remote from most of the villages, the kids come there and stay the first 3 weeks out of each month. They learn there, they sleep there, they eat there, they study there, they tend their vegetable bed there, and then we take them back to their home village for the last week in the month. And the school year there starts in January and ends at the end of October. So that's how they're structured. So, in case you're wondering how well this has worked, this is one of our success stories. Isabel was a young girl. She's tiny, and she wanted to learn. She kept pestering her parents. I need to learn. I want to learn. And so they finally let her apply at the Maya Jaguar Middle School. And even though her Spanish was not sufficient to really keep up with that curriculum, they gave her, because she was otherwise promising, they gave her remedial Spanish training, and she got herself up to the level where she could function. And successfully, eventually, and I met this girl, she was impressive. She eventually succeeded in graduating from high school at the top of her class, and she aced all the technical skills that they were graded on when she graduated. So she decided she really, really liked computer science and really wanted to learn more computer science. And so several of us got together and we raised enough money to send her to a total immersion, intensive training computer science academy, where in 1 year she came out with a certified computer science degree of some kind. I mean, not your typical 4-year degree, but it was a total immersion, intense study program. So she decided, so at first everybody thought, well, now she's going to get a really fantastic job somewhere in Guatemala City or some other nearby, well, not nearby city, but she decided she would like to come back to the school and be the computer science instructor there. So she wanted to give back to the school that gave her a chance. And now, not only is she doing that, but she is also really serving as a great role model for the other kids. And not just the girls. Yeah.
They have satellite connection to get the internet, or they have no?
We're looking at Starlink. But right now, it's the government bureaucracy is not certifying that yet. And then it would be a matter of acquiring the systems and paying for them. But yes, we're looking at that.
It's just local computing capability.
Well, they subscribe to an internet service out of Mexico, which costs them $500 a month. And when I was there, we were lucky when we get 2 hours a day of connectivity. And more often not, the thing is down and there are no refunds and no customer service. And anyway, it's a little problematic. So during COVID, when they were trying to do online learning, it was a real mess. So anyway, more challenges. So here's some of the costs. This was the total budget last year. COVID just wrote havoc with all of this. And we're trying to recover and figure out how to re-budget and figure out how much we need to plan for and so on and so on. So that's fluid right now. This one, though, has so much more potential right now. And this is kind of what we figured out were the costs associated with running one program in one village. It can usually serve 10 to 20 kids, more or less, within that range of cost. And so this is what we're trying to raise funds for right now to help with either trying to furnish a library for books. Of course, they reuse the books all the time. They're trying to do everything with everything. And then it costs a certain amount of money to get a bilingual teacher because they can't work for free either. So these are some of the costs that are associated with that very promising, I think, very promising program. And this is where I would like to invite you, if this is a program that moves you, if you think this is worthwhile, perhaps consider something along those lines. Now, this is one of the projects.
We had a question.
Can you, I couldn't see the bottom number on there. Could you read that one?
This is $1,000 a library for village children, for one village.
How many books does that? I
I
mean,
don't
that's
know,
books or is
it
that
includes
for?
books, board games, all kinds of supplies, crayons, all put together. So I don't know exactly the numbers on the books. And trying to get books is really hard too. I mean, you try to order from Amazon, you can't get it to Guatemala, and then somebody has to smuggle it in their suitcase to get it there. Or just trying to find suitable books has been a real challenge. I can't believe how expensive those things are. We've even tried to find perhaps a children's book author, illustrator, and we're just trying all kinds of different ways to make this work. So, anyway. So, 1,000 is the club. So, in April, several Rotarians from Canada got together, who were familiar with the project, got together and decided they wanted to come and help rebuild one of the school buildings that had been damaged in a recent earthquake. They brought all the stuff with them. They either bought it in Mexico or they brought some of it with them. Power tools, hand tools, extension cords, the lumber, all of that stuff they brought with them. And about 5 Rotarians they decided that the trying to refurbish the damaged building was not worthwhile, so they built another one. And this is the inside of the other one. But what they also did is they also taught the staff at the school there, because they have support staff, how to handle power tools, how to use different equipment, so on and so on. And they all helped, became involved. And a number of students in the high school also were involved and learned skills like how do you measure this to fit that, what's the angle you need. So we called it the Carpentry and Math Project. It was very successful.
The only thing that seasons there, right, is pretty much the same temperature year round,
No, they have a rainy season and a dry season.
but temperature-wise,
It gets cooler, but not, I mean, I was there in May, and it was fairly warm and humid at the time. Like, that was the beginning of the rainy season.
because I'm thinking, you're not that far from Equate then, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, they don't really, winter coats is not really something that that I've seen much of. So anyway, so this project with those Canadian Rotarians, they helped raise the money, and they brought the equipment, they left the equipment there. So now this is not only a shop where they can use everything, all these, the power tools here are all lined up, and they have storage and all kinds of stuff, but they also now know how to use it. So that's great.
Yeah, I was associated with another program, it was basically the Doctors Without Borders, where when they go into some of these countries,
Yeah.
basically everything they take with them they need because it's too hard to get it back out.
Yeah. And because the need is locally there anyway, right?
So
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking, is there an import problem with duties or?
Yes.
So
Guatemala
if
is
you
a very
bring it
corrupt
with you and
country.
you forget to bring it out with you is the way to do it, is what you're saying?
I haven't asked that question. I'm not sure I want to ask that question. I don't know how they did it. I don't know whether they bought most of it where they came from in Canada or whether they brought most of it from Mexico. It's not clear. The vice president of the organization is someone you may have heard of, Ted Rose, Project Amigo. I don't know if Mary, you've heard of it years ago. Anyway, he's still a Rotarian in our district, also a recipient of the Service Above Self Award, by the way. And he is now the vice president and heading all this up. And he's still, of his 40-plus years as a Rotarian, he has a lot of Rotary connections. And he's currently in our district, but he has been in other districts. So he's pulling in all those connections to help us on this. Now, what I don't have here is another project that just happened. And 10 specific sponsors got together and put together funds to host a trip for all the kids to learn more about their culture. And you all have heard of Tikal, the Mayan ruins. It's one of the big ones. So they took several of the teachers and all of the students got to go to Tikal for a week. And the teachers would present lessons about the ancient culture of the Maya from that area. And then they would go and see all of those things, and then they'd come back and discuss it. And it was really interesting. This just happened last month. It was really interesting. The kids came back, and some of them said things like, "This is the first time I've been on a river," or "This is the first time I've been outside my village," or "I didn't know the water felt like that because they crossed the river in a boat." And it's just fascinating, and they learned. All of the teachers were bilingual, so they learned about the Maya heritage and the culture in the native language and in Spanish. So it was a very intense week for them, but it was another apparently very successful project, and we're waiting to find a videographer who could put together a sort of a collage of the trip, and they wrote, the kids were so excited, they wrote a little play about their experiences. So now we're hoping someone can film that play so we can all see it. They were very enthusiastic about it. Did you have a question?
I did. I mean, I feel a little embarrassed about how little I know about Guatemala.
We can't know everything about everything. You know?
But it does strike me as possible, and I'm wondering, do some of these Mayan groups, is there a stigma against learning Spanish? I mean, is that considered to be kind of,
Because of the Civil War.
because of the Civil War,
Well-
because of the fact that, like, you know, the Spanish people basically are the immigrants that took, you know, and I'm just wondering if that's,
The Maya are the downtrodden, the
Right.
looked down upon in Guatemala and other places, not
Right.
just in Guatemala, by the more Spanish heritage.
right,
Guatemala.
I
Yes.
get that, but even in the United States, like, there are groups within the United States that are considered to be lesser and lower class, and therefore they protect their own language, their own ways of speech and languages.
Well-
They use that as a form of cultural identity.
I didn't get a sense that that was true here. They are eager to learn because they want to be able to function in their own country and be able to get good jobs.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that they're going to have to forget their native, their Maya language. And that's why it is, see, they're bilingual without forcing them to give up their Maya language. They need to learn Spanish to be functioning citizens in the country.
You mentioned multiple Mayan languages. Are
Yes.
these somewhat compatible, or are they discrete, different
They're
languages?
very different. And in this area, they have Mam, they have Kanjamal, and they have Chush. Now, I think there are probably at least a dozen more that are all distinct.
Yeah.
And the reason why these three are in that area is because the traditional villages where they spoke some of those,
Mhm.
people were displaced during the Civil War and had to settle elsewhere and hide in places where they couldn't be massacred or found. And so that's why they ended up in these remote, truly, truly remote places. So that's the fallout.
So you've got people that probably haven't been more than 15, 20 miles from where they were born their whole life.
Yeah.
So then, does getting a job, does that mean actually leaving where they live right now, going to the city?
Well, for instance, the nearest city, if you will, probably Coos Bay size, is 2.5 hours away. It's Hawaii, yes. They have businesses there, they have stores there, they have service businesses that require computer skills. So that would be a place where someone could get a decent job if you can function in Spanish and you have some computer skills. That's a desirable skill to have.
Gotcha.
So that's part of what we're trying to do. I mean, let's face it, this is a drop in the bucket, but you know, in Rotary we always say one child at a time.
Yeah.
You know, so what can I say? So I'd like to invite you to join us if this is something that moves you. I'd like to, if I may, follow up with a little proposal that you may want to consider at some point.
Yeah, we have a request on our web, request for.
We do, Jerry and I were just talking about how our funding form is designed sort of more for local groups that ask
Yes.
questions like how we can get back to
Right.
our community. I think that if you just send us an email,
I will.
I think that's
Send us an email and we'll have a meeting
Yeah,
of the board to start with, and then we'll bring it back to everybody. But we'll have a meeting of our board and discuss.
sure.
I really appreciate you being here. Interesting program. We try to wrap up in about a month. But we appreciate the work you do. It looks like it's, to me, a great program. So thank
Well,
you.
if you're interested in becoming involved in an international project, I'd like to propose that you take a look at this. You know, education is important. I'm a strong believer in education, so,
Yeah,
you know, it goes so much further.
it does. It's like lifting people up by their bootstraps,
Exactly.
teaching them how to fish rather than just
Exactly.
giving them the fish kind of
Yeah.
thing. So how about a round of applause?
I just wanted to follow up with an interesting thing in Oregon, because we're trying to develop collections in Spanish. We actually have a program where we send book buyers to the Guadalajara Book Fair in Mexico because it's easier and cheaper for us to acquire those books in Mexico, and a lot of them are books we can't get in the United States. And so, I mean, I understand probably the difference is that getting them from Mexico
that's
It's
less
more
of an
difficult.
issue. Yeah, it's
It-
less of an issue, yeah. But if you have some leads in that
And
area.
that's what I was wondering,
I would
would you
love
want
to
me to
hear
look
those.
into that?
Yeah.
Because really, you're looking for the same sort of
Right,
content that
right.
we're looking for.
Most of what we found in the bilingual areas is always English-Spanish, Spanish-English. That's not useful here.
Right.
But yes, quality books and books that fit the environment.
Yeah.
We're not talking about books that show
You don't need academic.
a
books.
child and its parents go on